Hi, welcome to Anatomy Lesson 8.02, Muscles of the Head and Neck. So what I've done here is I've taken your handout in your note packet and I've pre-color coded everything. And if you want to pause the video to catch up and do all your coloring, and then you can add the notes. So let me just go through my colors, and then I've also put little keys over here to the side where I'll write the name of the muscle. So we've got regular green and orange. Got light blue, dark blue. I've got light brown, dark green, teal, yellow, red, and dark pink. So go ahead, pause the video, catch up the coloring, and I'll see you when you're done. Okay, here we go. Now that we have these all color coded, let's talk about, for all of them, we're going to label them and do the names. Now you'll notice there's a lot of muscles that we're leaving off the table: the nasalis, the mentalis, all of these, levator, forget the last part of that, but each of these little groups are ones that we're not doing. So we're going to hit the main ones. And we'll divide these into categories. So we start with the muscles of the top of the head, of the cranium. I'm going to do all the notes in black today since everything else is color coded. Now, the three that we're doing here have these three are known. If you put these three structures together, these are called the Epicranius. So this one, and this one together are called the Epicranius. Epicranius, which means above or on the head. Let me make sure that's on the screen. And these two are muscle groups. This third one is a sheet of connective tissue, and these are named for the bones that they lie on top of. So the green is the Frontalis, and the orange is the Occipitalis. All the muscles end with, almost all of the muscles end with ALIS, kind of like sugars always end with OSE, and enzymes always end with ASE. Now, this structure here in the middle is a tough connective tissue. And anytime you see these in the body, these are known as aponeuroses. So the name of this aponeuroses is the Gallia, Galea, Gallia aponeurosis. The Gallia aponeurosis. If you contract your frontalis, try to go ahead and do that now. You'll probably feel your eyebrows moving. So the action, so some of these we're going to do just the name. Some of these we're going to do name and action. Most of these will do name and action. And then some will do action, origin, and insertion. So here we have the frontalis raises the eyebrows. I'm going to hit my focus. I feel like this is a little out of focus. I don't know if that helped or not. And then the occipitalis is difficult. These are all voluntary muscles, but it's difficult to get this to move voluntarily. But together, these form this sheet. And if you go ahead and you reach up and you take a hold of the top of your scalp and you tug back and forth, you can feel that it slides around. And when you tug backwards, you can feel your Gallia aponeurosis pulling on this frontalis. When you tug it forward, you can feel it pulling on the occipitalis. Even though this is a tough connective tissue, you still have a lot of blood supply up here. That's why if you cut your head, it bleeds a lot. Okay, moving on to the muscles of mastication. Muscles. I don't know why I lost my muscles of mastication. And if you're familiar with that term, you know that mastication means to chew. And we have two muscles of mastication, light pink and dark brown. And you'll notice that in this case, they're named for the bones they lie on top of, and this is true for this as well. So this light pink is the temporalis muscle, temporalis. And the dark brown is called the greater masseter, masseter. And the job of both of these, so any muscle of mastication, you might think it is to open the jaw, But actually, at our natural state, our jaw is kind of relaxed, and we have to contract these muscles to get the jaw to close. So the action for both of these, I'm going to do an A here, is to close the jaw. So we're closing the jaw. What we're going to talk about for these two are the origin and the insertions. So the origin, and remember the insertion moves towards the origin. So if we're closing the jaw, the insertion is always going to lie below the origin here. So let's do origin and insertion, origin and insertion. So the origin for the temporalis is on the temporalis bone, or on the temporal bone. Temporal bone. That's where the origin for this muscle is. And what we can't see, and we'll look at this when we get back to class on something called human biodigital, where we can remove these. But what we'll see is that it inserts on the mandible, obviously, because this should actually be mandible. Let's use our correct terms there. It's not just anywhere on the mandible, it's actually the coronoid process, coronoid, coronoid process of the mandible. So we have specific insertion points. The greater masseter is the one that actually provides the most force. There is a ton of force that's provided by this muscle. So if you bite and you clamp down, and in fact, in a lot of animal species, this muscle is huge. I think sharks or crocodiles have the greatest force from the masseter. Now, this bone is the zygomatic bone, if you remember from our bone chapter, and it looks like this is kind of like inserting on this muscle. What happens is this actually continues on up underneath this muscle, and you see the origin of the greater masseters on the zygomatic bone. And when we remove this muscle, we can see that it inserts not just anywhere on the mandible, but on the angle. So this inserts on the angle of the mandible. And we talked about the fact that the insertion moved towards the origin. So every time you close your mandible, the angle of the mandible moves up towards the insertion, the zygomatic bone, and the coronoid process moves up towards the temporal bone. So this is in keeping with what we know about origin and insertion. Then we get into up here, I'm going to put muscles of expression. And these are also muscles of expression. So let's do a dashed line here. I was a little bit short for room here. So, but yeah, down here we also have muscles of expression. I'll just put MOE. So my two circular muscle groups, and then these three all make up the muscles of expression that we're going to learn. The blue ones are down here because these are special. These are sphincters. And because they're sphincters, the name is Orbicularis. And if you think about something that's an orbit, ORBI, that's circular. So because these are both circular muscles, they're both orbicularis. So the light blue is the orbicularis. And because it goes around the eye, this is the orbicularis oculi. This one is a sphincter that's around the mouth, so this is the orbicularis. And if you remember your terms of your body regions, this is oral, so this is the orbicularis oris. And these are both sphincters. So you actually have three sphincter muscles on your face. And these allow us to voluntarily close the eye and voluntarily close the mouth. So we have other sets of muscles around the eye that cause involuntary closure, but we have control of our orbicularis oculi and our orbicularis oris. The other three that we're going to talk about move this in a different way. So let's start with the dark pink. And the origin here is on the zygomatic bone. And notice that we don't always originate and insert on bones. I usually like to ask you about origins and insertions that are on bones. But my point here is this muscle originates on the zygomatic, but it inserts on the orbicularis oris. So you can actually have muscle-to-muscle insertion. And this muscle is named for its origin. This is the zygomaticus. Z-Y-G-O-M-A-T-I-C-U-S. Zygomaticus. So it's named for the origin. You don't have to know that. But when you contract your zygomaticus, you can think if this muscle shortens, you can kind of see what's going to happen. And the corner of the mouth is going to go up. So this pulls up the corner of the mouth. And this is one of the muscles responsible for smiling. Okay, here we have this short little muscle, and you can't see the other end of it. It lies underneath the masseter. But you can see that it inserts at the corner, the middle of the orbicularis oris. This is called the risorius. R-I-S-O-R-I-U-S, the risorius. And this pulls, should say pulls corner of the mouth up. This pulls the corner of the mouth to the side. Pulls the mouth to the side. When you do that, people will say you're smirking. They'll say, oh, that's a smirk. And so we talk about this being a muscle that causes you to smirk. Now, in yellow, it looks like it's like two pieces of muscle coming down. If I could pull this muscle off and this muscle off, you would see that this actually, the shape of it lies underneath this whole thing. And when we're on human biodigital, what we'll do is we'll remove these muscles, and you can see that this is actually a quite a large muscle. This is called the buccinator. You remember, this is named for a body region. Buccal is cheek, and so, or the buccinator, you can pronounce it. I've seen it pronounced both ways. But this is an interesting muscle. When we get back to class, I'll give you guys something to chew on, and I'll tell you, try to do it without using your cheek to push the food back and forth. This draws the cheek inward. Or if you're eating lunch today, go ahead and try to chew without pulling your cheeks in. So as you chew, it pushes the food back and forth back into the oral cavity. And without it, it's really actually difficult to eat. The other thing is if you are playing an instrument and you need to, or you want to whistle and you want to draw the cheeks in, you're going to use that muscle. Okay, from here, we're going to move to muscles of the neck. And we're going to learn 3 of those. So here I have my light brown, my teal, and my dark green. And in light brown, the first one that I have is called the Platysma, P-L-A-T-Y-S-M-A. And it draws the chin either down or out. So if you tuck your chin to chest, so it takes the chin. Pull the chest, or if you are going to like if you wanted to push your chin out, like try to push your chin away. Think about if a guy shaves, he does this to try to kind of straighten the neck. So this pulls that chin down and out. I don't think I gave myself enough room for the next one, so I am going to do this and redraw. Because we're going to talk about origins and insertions for these last 2. In teal, and it's also a very long name, so I'm going to actually start the name over here. if you remember your skull anatomy, you'll remember that the mastoid process lies right underneath here. And as we come down to the front here, I'm going to have my sternum and I'm going to have my clavicle down here. I might be a little off screen there, but I wrote sternum and clavicle. And so the name of this muscle here, this strap-like band, and go ahead and put your fingers in the hollow of your neck and turn your head. Walk the fingers up to the base of the skull. You're basically walking your fingers up this strap-like muscle. It's called sternocleidomastoid. The mastoid is actually the insertion. And the sternum and the clavicle, remember, cleido is clavicle. This is the origin. And my action here is I'm going to take my, I can bend the head to the side, or I can use it to turn the head right and left. So we're either going to turn the head, or you can think of taking the ear to shoulder, or ear to shoulder. And think about that. The mastoid, like, find your mastoid process. When you are contracting that muscle, that's what's moving. And so that's why the mastoid's the insertion, and the sternum and the where we're at on the sternum and the clavicle are the origin. All right, let me get my dark green marker back out. All right, finally, this great big muscle group to the back is part of a much larger muscle group called the trapezius. And there's actually three divisions. There's an upper, a middle, and a lower. So we're looking at the upper trapezius here. And my action is to elevate the shoulders. Elevate the shoulders, or pull the head down. Actually, you're bringing the head. As you look up, you'll feel muscles contract at the base, and so we're rotating the head that way. Our origin are it's the nuchal lines. I'm probably going to have to bring this down a little bit. So remember when we learned our nuchal lines at the base of the skull? The nuchal lines on the occipital. And the spinous processes of C1 through C7. I insert on the clavicle. And so if you pull your shoulders forward, that's actually using your trapezius. And of course, we can't see the insertion here. The origin we can see on the, so this would be the nuchal lines here. And when we get to the back, I'll point this out again because we can look at these upper trapezius in more detail. So this is actually named for the shape of the muscle. So we've seen a lot of different naming. We've been named for the bone that we lay on top of. We've been named for the shape. Here's a shape muscle. So when you look at the trapezius from the back, it makes this trapezoid. It looks like that. That's the shape of it overall. And you have like the upper, middle, and lower. We're named for origin and insertion points. Sometimes we're named for other non-necessarily related. All right, but let's just run through these again. So we have done the frontalis, raises the eyebrow, the occipitalis. We really didn't give an action there because these kind of act in tandem with one another. We have the muscles of mastication that close the jaw. That's their action. Temporalis and the greater masseter, and they have different origins and insertions. We have the orbicularis, the sphincters, the orbicularis oculi, orbicularis oris that close the mouth, close the eyes. These are part of the muscles of expression as well. So over here, these muscles of expression. We have the zygomaticus, pulls the corner of the mouth up. Razorius pulls it to the side. And buccinator draws the cheeks in. Muscles of the neck, the platysma takes the chin down and out. We did not do origin and insertion there, but sternocleidomastoid we did. Turns the head, takes the ear to the shoulder. And trapezius, we did origin and insertion. So overall, we have 4 origins and insertions. And that takes care of all of the muscles of the head and neck. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.